The upcoming Israeli elections could turn on this question. Are they like everyone else? Or do they have their own unique position? Are they, in short, a solid voting bloc? The they are the 750,000 Russian voters, potential voters who are immigrants from the Soviet Union, known to veteran Israelis as the Russians. What the Russians will vote is not a simple question, but it could indeed determine the outcome of the March 28th elections, among the most critical elections in Israel's history. But what a strange election campaign it's proving to be. Only a few short months ago, everyone was convinced that existential questions of borders, peace, conflict would not, for once, be centre stage. Rather, that issues of social neglect and economic inequalities were going to dominate. The Labour Party's choosing of its leader as a man with a social message, the Histadrut trade union leader Amir Peretz, seemed inspired. But then, remember what Henry Kissinger once famously said about Israeli politics and Israeli policies. Israel, said the guru, the diplomatic guru of the 70s, has no foreign policy, only domestic politics. In this respect, the Russians are turning out to be as Israeli can be. One would have perhaps imagined that Labour, with its stress on social policies, would be able to attract the immigrants by dint of their situation, people very much in need of state protection. But it's foreign policy that interests them. And it seems that that's going to shape their vote, and that may in turn shape the outcome of this curious election. For what has happened in recent weeks is that relations with the Palestinians, or more accurately, lack of relations with the Palestinians, is again the fulcrum question. It's become so ever since we saw the radical Islamists of Hamas storming to a staggeringly easy triumph in the Palestinian elections. The Russian-Israeli voter shies away from anything that smacks of state control. But there's something else which is key in their makeup. They want their leaders strong, and they want a strong policy in face of outside challenges and threats. Ariel Sharon was their man, very much their man. Had Sharon not been stricken down a few weeks ago with his debilitating medical condition, there seems little doubt that the great mass of the Russian immigrants would have again been with him. Still, they seemed content, according to the polls, to stay with Sharon's successor, Ehud Olmert, trusting him also to take a strong stand vis-à-vis the Palestinians. As the world now wonders what to do about Hamas, what to do with Hamas and with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen is very much the challenge of Israeli foreign policy. And there are some notable differences in the positions of the main parties about what Israel should be doing regarding Hamas. And how these parties posit themselves might, in turn, have a great deal to do with how the tough-minded Russian voters go to the polls in a few weeks from now. In the last couple of weeks, suddenly, the opinion polls are showing a new trend. Many Russian voters have shifted from Olmert's centrist Kadima party to the hardline far right, and some back to Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud. Bibi Netanyahu was certainly quick to latch on to the Hamas issue. The Likud's slogan for the campaign is "Strong against Hamas," saying that Hamas must be brought down and that there's no difference between a Hamas-led Palestinian Authority and President Abu Mazen seems to suit the Russians. Across the spectrum lies Labour, in contrast calling for Israel to back Abu Mazen, to help him in his appeal to moderate and tame Hamas, much indeed in line with the Americans and what they are asking of Israel, to strengthen Abu Mazen and not to sideline him. The most interesting position is that adopted by the acting Prime Minister. It had seemed as if Olmert was carefully calibrating his position against tilting too fiercely against Hamas, being prepared rather to let the radical group fall or stand on its own actions. But would Olmert be ready to help Abu Mazen, as Washington wants, help the man whom Ariel Sharon once described as a plucked chicken who can't fly? Not a bit of it, seems to be the answer. Irrelevant is how Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni chose to term the Palestinian president. The Palestinian Authority, she explained, is now essentially Hamas-directed. It can't be a two-headed body. Thus Israel will have nothing to do with it or with Abu Mazen, so long as he accepts a Hamas government alongside him. Now, I'm certainly not saying that Olmert's Kadima government or his popular foreign minister have deliberately toughened their stance vis-à-vis Hamas, simply in order to suit the Russian voters. But there is certainly an interesting dovetailing of positions. And there's something else very interesting about the collective Russian vote. For the past decade and a half, ever since they've been a major factor in Israeli elections, they've landed up voting for the winning Prime Minister, Yitzhak Rabin, then Bibi Netanyahu, then Ehud Barak, and then Ariel Sharon. Clearly, their votes do have a major impact. Or is it simply that they read very well what the majority of Israeli voters want from their leadership? Will they be right again this time? Will Olmert's stance convince them that he's tough enough, and not only prior to the election, but beyond it? Will, if he's elected, Olmert's position vis-à-vis the Palestinians continue to satisfy the Russian voters? These are questions most suitable at election time, a time when the Kissinger dictum of domestic policies affecting national policies comes into play. Rightly comes into play, because isn't the interaction of voter desires on one hand and would-be leaders and their policies on the other precisely something one expects to see in a healthy democratic process?